My name's Simon. This is Arrie. We're here to talk to you about fantastic chatbots and where you can possibly find them. So, here we go. So we're developers from Platform 45. Platform 45 does kind of custom software development with Ruby on Rails. Best way to describe us is we try build things that matter, we try build the right things, and we try build those things right. We also used a lot of Root. Root is a new programmable bank coming into South Africa. They're part of our demo today. So let's get to it. Why doth ye such a fantastic beast? And this means, why are we interested in chatbots? So, Arrie, take it away. Oh, it's me. Cool, so I'm a big fan of AI, if anybody knows me. I believe chatbots, like many other AI concepts, are gravely misunderstood. So, you know, chatbots in particular, because their interface is conversation, this is even more so, right? But chatbots and AI in general can seem a bit like a magic show, right? So at a magic show, you attend to be willingly deceived for entertainment, right? But like a magic trick, once you understand how the trick works, the magic is gone. You kind of feel disappointed, right? So when you might interact with a chatbot and you see something fails, you'll kind of feel like, oh, well, this thing really isn't that cool. Okay? So then you might consider chatbots to be kind of like a little playful toy. You might think, okay, well, my Slack bot will talk to me from time to time, but you might say to me, Simon, that's not like how I talk to you, like to another human being, right? And I agree with you, but the thing is, conversation is extremely complex, right? And especially voice. Voice kind of technology, synthesis and understanding voice has only really got to a point now where we can do silly things. So like, you can still use voice for a few things, something like reminders, checking your calendar, and now with integrations like Arrie's Chromecast, you can like change channel on Netflix and stuff. So you can do certain things, but we're not quite there yet.
Cool. So from our perspective, we work to solve usability problems for our users. We want to really build systems that are valuable to them and that actually matter. And part of that is actually building systems that are also easy to use, easy to interact with, and that are simple for the user experience. And we believe that we've come pretty far, basically crossing chasms almost with like design thinking and product thinking and trying new innovative approaches to solve usability problems and give the users a better experience. So what we thought about a little bit is how the natural progression of this is moving into chatbots and chat interfaces to actually interact with the thousands of systems that are around us every day. So being able to actually tell your app to do something like set an alarm or book a movie is simpler to use, far more intuitive, and it's just a better experience than having to go through menus and screens and not really knowing where or what you're actually looking for. So natural language processing is really one of the foundational parts of AI, and for us it's kind of one of those final bridges between man and machine.
So what Arrie mentioned, conversation is very intuitive, right? And with such an interface, you can't expect it to be perfect, or at least yet, right? So I explained there's problems. Let me just illustrate this with an example. My wife, Jen, hates Siri, right? Completely hates it. And the reason she hates it is she wasn't very keen on it in the start. You know, it's like kind of weird. And I encouraged her to use Siri. Why don't you like try it out? And so she was driving in her car the one day, and she said, she picked up a phone. She was like, Siri, phone Stacy Smith. And Siri was like, Googling a plate of chips. You know, so, and then she like kind of, she's like, okay, let me just give it a second shot, okay. Phone Stacy Smith, and it like does the same thing. And so whenever I say to her, like, my love, why don't you use Siri? She's like, remember the chips, you know. So I don't really, I don't believe it works for a lot of scenarios, right? But we are getting there, okay? Now, it's important to realize when one believes a chatbot is actually smart, but then you realize it doesn't work like that, you might get frustrated, and that feeling is actually, it's got a name. It's called the uncanny valley. So in AI, when you're interacting with something that is personable, and then you realize that it's actually not, you feel kind of betrayed and uneasy, and you get this kind of negative feeling, and it like kind of turns you off. You're like, okay, well, I'll just press buttons rather. I'd rather interact with the web interface or whatever. So we are getting there. You know, we understand the stuff is not perfect. We're not naive. But the reason chatbots are not perfect is because the way that we communicate is obviously extremely complex. You know, it's not just language. There's like these cues, there's our accents, there's like double meanings, very, very complex, right? But there are things that we can do, right? And chatbots are becoming more and more popular. So not the voice version, the audio version, but like the type version, because at least then we're dealing with text, okay? So we don't have to deal with the audio problems. And this is already being used in like support, scheduling, and changing Netflix channels. So remember I said chatbots are gravely misunderstood? Well, if there's one thing I'd like you to take away from this talk is that you can do this now, right? You can build a chatbot without knowing anything about AI, okay? So that's really what I want you to take away from this. You know, it's kind of crazy to think as a developer. You know, my wife would look at me and say, "You're a developer. You should know this kind of stuff." But you know, in reality, it's completely ridiculous to think that we could know all of this. So I want to encourage you: if something is uncertain, you know, don't think that it's exclusive. Like, just try it. You know, I think development for me at least is a very humbling career. Every day I feel out of my depth. There's like a new problem I didn't know how to solve yesterday, which I like. Keeps me grounded. Cool. So, what saith thee about chatbots, Arrie? We're going to tell you guys a little bit about the technologies involved without getting like too hands-on, because you can Google that stuff.
Okay, as Simon mentioned there, chatbots seem to be very complex. And he's very much right, saying that when we can peel back that mystery and magic and everything, then we can start getting comfortable with building these types of things. So to make it a bit simpler, and just put it simply, it's literally just an algebraic function mapping an input space to an output space. You basically take in what the user says, get some meaning, and understand what you want to do, and then you respond appropriately. And basically, in order to truly one day pass the Turing test, where intelligence of a machine should be indistinguishable from that of a human, it's very important to consider natural language as kind of an essential part of that, because without it, AI would not really be complete.
Cool. So there is AI involved, and we're just going to take a quick look at the technologies that are brought together to enable us to have these conversations. You start with a human, Anna. She types something. My name is Anna. That goes directly to the chatbot. Okay. So the chatbot is a collection of technologies. We use Google Dialogflow for our demo. There are others. There's Amazon Alexa and such. And involved there are rule-based systems, neural networks, and optimization algorithms, which you need to know nothing about, which is great. The chatbot is then responsible for deriving intent based on the text, and you set up this kind of dialogue. You say, I'm expecting these kinds of things, and then you give me a structured input. What you do with that, we'll talk about exactly that payload later, is it gets sent to your app, and that's like a single controller endpoint. You can handle that request and then respond appropriately. You can also have your chatbot respond immediately, so you can set up under certain conditions, just reply with like a static response. So if you're using a voice interface, it's just an additional step. You might either type something or say something. So those are audio waves. The audio waves just go through an additional step. That's a neural network, converts it to text, and the chatbot always gets text. the same goes for the other way around. So the chatbot always responds with text. If the person spoke, then you need to synthesize that text into audio waves that sound like speech. So some takeaways here. This interface is completely separate from the actual chatbot logic. So I mentioned Google Dialogflow. That's where you set up like the conversation. So you say, when the person says, I want to register, or sign me up, then you derive meaning from that, and you say, cool, when you see those words, these kinds of things, the person wants to register. That kind of logic all sits in the chatbot and is completely separate from the interface itself. So when you see a UI, like a chat interface, that is actually just, it's actually just HTML and CSS, right? So you can build the chatbot with Dialogflow or Wit AI or any of these cloud services, and then you can turn on the integration, like just turn it on, and you can literally say, cool, I want this on Facebook, I want this on Telegram, and we used Google Assistant for our voice demo we're going to show you at the end. So, how shalt thou implement such chatbots, Arrie?
So, when it comes to implementing chatbots, there's basically three main concepts to just understand. Like Simon mentioned, you don't really need to know all the nitty-gritties about AI and how the networks work and all of that. But the three main concepts start with intent. So intent is literally just asking the question, what do you mean, or what do you want to do, and getting that from the user input and actually just understanding that bit. So the chatbot takes the input and goes through that functional mapping, gets that, derives the meaning, and then finds the appropriate response. But the reason why unmasking intent is so difficult is because language is often very ambiguous and has all of these nuances and these intricacies that we speak with that is very difficult for a computer to actually just understand off the bat. And if you kind of think about when you're writing an application and stuff, is we don't program in English. You know, that would be just a mess. And so we kind of moved on to, you know, writing very unambiguous, explicit code, special languages for computers to understand, interpret our intent and what we would like them to do. So deriving the correct intent is important because it allows your users to speak as intuitively and simply as possible. And we had this conversation the other day where someone just mentioned that we've kind of been conditioned to speak to chatbots recently and ask things like, what's the weather forecast? Well, that's not really how we talk to each other. We actually want to just know, like, should I wear a jacket? Or, you know, should I take an umbrella with me? And that's more intuitive, and that's kind of the place that we're trying to reach in the conversations with our systems effectively.
Cool. So the second important thing that you need to know about chatbots are entities, right? So entities are just important data in the conversation that you want your bot to be aware of, right? So in this example, my favorite color is yellow. You might give your chatbot a couple of example sentences, like this flower is yellow, blah, 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 blue, and you'd highlight those things and say this is an entity, it's called a color, and then it would it would parse that and give you like a nice structured payload. Entities can also be composite and quite complex. So you can say you owe me 100 Rand, and you can set this up to parse as a currency with a unit and an amount. Cool, and last but not least, we have context. Context takes those entities, and when you start a conversation, you have context of what has previously been said, right? And you tell the chatbot, cool, keep track of these entities because I'm going to need them later. So this is also a simple example. This cheeseburger is delicious. Damn right it is, right? So you don't have to say, damn right this cheeseburger I'm eating right now is delicious. It's like seems silly to us, but for a bot that's like very complex, right? Cool. We won't do that yet. Other way.
Yeah. Not back. Other way. Other way. Yeah, it's just on the second part. Other way. There we go.
Yours is like the unnatural way?
Yeah, completely.
Cool, so I'm going to talk you guys through those three things: intent, entity, and context with a little example. This is our app that we're building. We hope it helps people. It's called WealthBit, very techy, right? It's a financial planning tool that tells you whether you're going to be safe for retirement. Since the 1970s, pensions don't pay out enough to feed you until you die. So this is a truth that America has introduced other funds to help you, Roth IRAs, those kind of things. In South Africa, you have RAs. Simple truth is that a lot of us don't know about this kind of stuff and actually aren't safe. So what the system does, it says, this is your retirement status. Based on your spend, you're going to need actually this amount of money. You can't work at a company for 40 years and expect them to feed you anymore, at least. You actually need to save a bit of money. So that's like the whole system. And I'll stop talking now. Can you guys see this? Make it a bit bigger? Yeah. Cool, so he said I'd like to register. And there we have our intent. The user wants to sign up or create an account. Cool, so now that's interacted with our app. We've picked up this person with this email address doesn't exist. We're going to prompt them to create an account. And here we have an entity and contact at play. So he's given us his name. We've parsed that. We've set it as his name. And then we've responded with nice personal touch. Nice to meet you, Arrie. Right? So it makes it like a little bit more like a magic show. Right? Cool, and all of this stuff, this is all a single intent. So you might model this as the user's intention here is to register. We've collected all that information, and at the end of that intent, Dialogflow, which we've set up this dialogue with, will hit your app with all that data that's collected in the context, and then you can use that to create their account. And in our scenario, we kind of have to send them an OTP. So this is where you go, and then if you click continue, you'll kind of start onboarding. So I mean, this is it's a little bit naive, right? Because why would you build a chat interface on your web app? Doesn't make sense. But like I said, the interface is separate from the bot. Okay? So we use Google Dialogflow. That's where all the chat logic sits. But we can deploy that interface to Google Assistant. So you can sign up with your voice. You can sign up via employee benefits program. So if a company has like an internal chat, they have like their own Slack, whatever, or if they have Basecamp or whatever they're using, you can use that interface to kind of reach a new kind of segment of users or business talk with this new interface, right? Cool, and now let's have some fun. So Arrie's going to do the talking now. We've got a little Google Home here, and we built this little, this cool demo inspired by OfficeN. We went to one of their Make Days. It was really awesome, and really recommend it. And today, we got access to the Root API. So we're using Root, we're using Google Dialogflow for the chat kind of logic, and we're using Google Assistant as the interface. Cool, I'm going to hold my mic on this thing and pray that it works. Okay, hey Google, access my bank account.
Sure, here's the test version of the Root bot. Hello from Root, what would you like to do?
What's my account balance?
Your current balance is 1,202.22 Rand.
I'd like to pay someone.
Who would you like to pay?
Simon.
How much would you like to transfer?
200 Rand.
Got it, you're sending Simon 200 Rand. Is this correct?
Yes.
Great, transferred 200 Rand to Simon successfully.
What's my account balance now?
Your current balance is 1,002.22 Rand.
And what was my last transaction?
Your last transaction was for 200 Rand with description, EFT.
That's EFT, right? Cool. I think I'm allowed to show this, right? It's fine?
Yeah, it's fine.
Cool.
We're here now.
Cool there, 1st of Feb, 1049, $200. So you can't transfer, we're actually doing real API calls there to root. This is all live. I can actually use the credit card, buy some coffee now. It's really cool. Yeah, that's it.